I had the opportunity to sit down and interview Charles Durrett. Charles is actually a major proponent of senior co-housing. He's been doing it for decades. He graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with an architectural and environmental design. He's just really been advocating for senior co-housing. He is back and forth to Denmark, and this is the interview with him. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you can learn a lot, and I hope that Charles can be a resource for you and your community if you're thinking about co-housing. Hopefully you enjoy. Take care. All right, let's get into this. All right, Charles Durrett, thank you so much for being a part and, just a few minutes of your day. You pretty much wrote the book called Senior Cohousing, which is pretty unbelievable. And I just had some questions regarding this. I want to get into this book here in a little bit because it's really, really fascinating. But from the professional, what is senior co-housing? If a brief explanation of that.
Well, one of my favorite senior activists in the U.S., Bill Thomas, he wrote in his best-selling book, What Are Old People For? He wrote that you could take 20 seniors, put them on a boat, and send them to a desert island, and they will do a better job of providing for themselves than anything else we have conjured up as a society. You can take all the PhD geriatrologists, and for some reason or another, and it's a combination of how we look at things and how we regulate things, it's very difficult to come anywhere close to the incredible environments that they make for themselves. And I'm just saying that because I have a lot of experience creating these environments with 20, 30, 40 seniors. And every time I do, I just marvel how it fits them like a glove. Take long for people to see and say, in my own life, my life will be easier, more convenient, more practical, more economical, more fun, more interesting, more safe, more healthy, if I give cooperation the benefit of the doubt. And that's what co-housing is. We always start off with what's called Study Group 1, Chapter 7 in the book, Senior Cohousing, because they say in Denmark, you could walk down any busy street and you could ask 100 seniors, would you ever consider living in senior co-housing? And maybe one will say yes. But if you ask 100 seniors who've taken this 10-week class that the Danes conjured up called Study Group 1, then probably 40 will say yes. And that's the exact same experience we've had here in the U.S. I give that class every fall. This year it starts October 2nd. And it basically has 3 components over 10 weeks. Getting people conscious of the real issues getting older. Your social life is waning, your physiology is at risk, et cetera, et cetera. And then, mental capacity, what does co-care look like? What does co-healing look like? All this stuff. Getting people conscious of the issues. Number 2 is helping people imagine getting out of denial. So many seniors do not want to grow older and too often wait till the last minute to react to that reality.
That's the problem I see from my side, being on the ground floor, is that people wait too long.
Over and over. It's very much the boiling frog scenario, which is if you put a frog in cold water and you put a fire under it, they will die 100% of the time. But if the frog jumps into hot water, i.e. it's really conscious of the issue right now, then he'll jump out and survive. Yeah. So it's very much that scenario. And then thirdly, helping them imagine getting very thoughtful in their proactive phase, where they're grappling with the realities now. They're grappling with their own denial. And, basically they come to the conclusion that you're actually lucky if you're getting older because and now how do I embrace that luck and get the most out of it? One of the things that you get out of Study Group 1, Session 2, is all about becoming, as a person, easier to work with. And that's not just true for people living co-housing. The grouchy old man who lives by himself in a house doesn't get the kind of support as a giving, loving person who understands nonviolent communication and, listening to others and hearing others. The bottom line for co-housers is, as a resident, you have to be willing to hear others. And these are others who have taken the time to learn something about nonviolent communication, learn something about, brainstorming, discussing, and deciding in a deliberate way as opposed to a random way. I was working on 3 senior co-housing at one point: Port Townsend, Stillwater, Oklahoma, Shepherdsville, West Virginia. And 2 of those groups had taken study group 1 and 1 did not. And the 2 that did were completed a lot faster and a lot easier, mostly because the seniors had both feet in the future. And the other group, they had 1 foot in the future and 1 foot in the past. And so consequently, they were always second guessing and pulling themselves back, taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, 1 step forward and then 3 steps back. I mean, it was kind of a ridiculous process by comparison. The participation is huge. It's huge. I don't even imagine planning a senior co-housing without the seniors at the table. I spend 12 days with them and figure out 2 things only: who are they and where do they want to go? And we do all that by consensus. I just did it last weekend in Vancouver, and the weekend before that in Port Townsend, and I did that previously in Port Townsend. That project's been there for about 7 years, and there's no doubt that it is state-of-the-art co-housing because the seniors are so happy, they respond so well to what they conjured up, and that makes sense because they're very much a party of making that new reality. Co-housing requires sort of an empty canvas. I mean, we have done plenty of projects where there's an old building that we're dealing with. Like in Emeryville, California, we built a project. Okay. And we took an old factory and rehabbed it, etc. But even then, the thoughtfulness is about what they're trying to create. And it's possible we would have torn down that factory as a result, but we didn't. It is scaling up in the U.S. I mean, I'm very happy with how more and more people are becoming aware of this possibility. This new movie by Robert, who wrote the, Bowling Alone. And, there's just so much consciousness now at large, and that's also essential, that pathological loneliness is pervasive in North America. Yeah. So, more and more people are getting proactive. But even then, there's so many advantages of taking that class together, study group 1, and you see there's a lot of seeing other seniors have the light bulb go off and then asking yourself, why is my light bulb not going off? It's very, I'm not going to say engineered, but it's a very social experience, seeing your part in a potential community coming up. Well, I went to architecture school at the largest school in the United States, California Polytechnic in San Luis Obispo. Yep. 500 kids in my graduating class. It's a consequential school. Because it's in the middle of nowhere, they give you an opportunity to go overseas for 1 of your 5 years of education. Okay. So I looked at the 5 programs very, very, very thoroughly. I looked at the 5 cultures very, very thoroughly. And I only had one question, which is, of these 5 cultures, Denmark, Italy, France, Spain, and Britain, of those 5 cultures, and sometimes Japan, etc., which culture was best at translating 2-dimensional goals? We say we want to make a safer, friendlier, smarter environment into the 3rd dimension. In other words, environments, walking environments, safe environments, all the rest. So which of the 5? And hands down, the Danes were doing it. I mean, that was like a year-long research project on my part. So I went there for that purpose. And, whether it was schools, hospitals, even prisons, definitely senior housing, definitely co-housing, definitely housing in general. They were best at. Now it's funny, they have a new ministry in Denmark called the Ministry of Sociology and Housing. So, I mean, they see the imperative of combining those two things. I just came back from Denmark, and there's a new co-housing there that I really enjoy, senior co-housing. Theoretically, you're 55 and older when you move in, but that project was started by a group of 5 people who were in their early 50s when they started it, planning to move in after 55. And they had a mission statement, just like every group has a mission statement, like we're going to live lighter on the planet and we're going to respect our neighbors and all that. Their mission statement was, we're going to have as much fun the second 50 years as we did the first 50 years. Here's another thing they did, which nobody does. They moved in with 5 teenagers who are all gone now. But I mean, that's how much flexibility you have in a self-initiated project. The issues of how well people get along and love each other end of the day does not come up. It's more a coalition between the bank, the planning department, the builder, and the business people, the financial investors. And, how do I readily and easily borrow a cup of sugar from my next door neighbor doesn't come up. And because that's complicated, it's all about the relationship. As part of writing this book, I visited what were considered the best assisted care in the U.S., the best ones. I'd stay there for 6 or 8 hours, and my research consisted of asking people, are you having a good time here? And I've been to the most expensive place in the Bay Area, and not one person told me they were having a good time. Oh, I hate it here because they make me wear a dinner jacket at night. Yeah. That kind of stuff. People, like my mother, who had raised 6 kids, owned her own business, etc., did not like being told what time she had to take aspirin, for example. In fact, you don't even get to keep the aspirin. They bring you the aspirin. So for a culture that theoretically likes independence and freedom and all that stuff, they let themselves get trapped into environments that are not very free and are very irritating to people who want to be more independent. Co-housing, it's 180 degrees different because people make all the rules and there's no regulations, because the only regulation is, what do we agree to do? Just finished a project and I wrote a book about it called State of the Art Co-housing in Fort Townsend. And when we started that project, the average age was 72 and a half. So, and every single person who lives there says, and it was finished 7 years ago, every single person who lives there says, I wish we would have started early. Well, they're usually condominiums because that's the path of least resistance from a development point of view. It takes 2 to 3 years. If I do a condo, a co-op, it's going to be 5 to 7 years. And, the American dream usually has, equity in your picture, not no equity like a condo. The psychology, the sociology, all of that comes to play, especially the physiology. One of the things that facilitated our project in Port Townsend, when we were getting started, a friend of one of the residents in that project was walking up the stairs in his house, fell backwards down the stairs and died. So all of a sudden the group realized, okay, we got to get out of these dumb houses with stairs. We've got to get into a supportive, neighborhood. It just put the gas on it. But, it took the whole group accelerating the process to do that. Process that has proven to be the simplest is they would take study group 1, which starts October 2nd. Okay. I think it's 10:30 Western time. And they would simply look up my webpage, cohousingco.com, and figure out how to sign up. I have trained probably, 50 trainers around the country who will do a study group 1 in your town. But, it's a very proximate thing. I would recommend that they would take this class and do a study group 1 in their town. Actually, the very first step is get a flyer all over town that says growing older, want to talk. Then they do study group 1 locally. Then usually what happens is somebody invites me or somebody else to come to their town and do a public presentation, and usually try to get 100 to 200 people there, because, and just everybody knows about it. Every politician, every neighbor, every friend knows about it, so that when you have 100 to 200 people in the room, everybody has the sense, I guess this is important. I guess this is going to happen. And it becomes not a fait accompli, but an obvious groundswell of interest, so that people can join, people can support it, and, do lots of other things. Then if I do that on Thursday night, which I usually do, then on Saturday morning, we're going to meet for all the folks who are serious about this project. We're going to meet at the local library, usually for 3 hours, and delineate the next steps. If you don't do that, it seems to take years and years to get a project built. So as a condominium, basically the future residents usually have to have 20% for a down payment. Okay. And that gets spent in the creation of making a new project. The group members usually have 2 to 3 years to figure out how they're going to put that 20% together, because it can be consequential. The most important consultant that the group would hire in that early phase is a mortgage broker, who would help them figure out how to line up that 20%. Because I've seen wonders. I did a project where 23 out of 26 were first-time home buyers, and they all became home buyers. And they accomplished that by having this mortgage broker counsel them. You have a new car, you have to sell that and get a used car. You have, you go to the movie twice a month now, you got to stop doing that until this project is built. Series how to counsel that. The units are a lot cheaper than regular houses, largely because those units are about 1,000 square feet, but they have a 4,000 square foot common house. So they really have 5,000 square feet. In other words, they have 3 guest rooms in the common house. They have a very warm and giving dining scene. It's funny because they have a caretaker unit in the common house. And when we created that caretaker unit, the criteria was, hey, if I'm bedridden and staying here because I want to stay here, then I want the person who's taking care of me to be honored, and I want to ennoble that role in the most meaningful way possible. So we're going to make a fantastic caretaker suite, and that caretaker might take care of Mrs. Hohenhausen for 10 hours a week, and Mrs. Palmer for 10 hours a week, and that kind of thing, and maybe even going to school gerontology somewhere in the town as well. So it's a very kind of sophisticated approach to neighborhood making, frankly, for seniors. Usually the houses are cheaper because it's basically, we do it based on what people can afford. I mean, if they can't afford anything, then there's usually a shared house or 2 in the development, and they're renting a room from somebody who could afford to build a bigger house. But they have their own indoor and outdoor door, and they have the common house to take some of the pressure off of the house itself. It's kind of a Golden Girl kind of scenario.
I just feel that the non-hierarchical structure is what people think about these communities. You hear about like nightmare HOAs or different types of associations that are just like, they're hounding me, like I just feel pressured, since it's non-hierarchical, what do you see the benefits of that? Or like, how does that play out within the community?
Well, if you can imagine regular condos, which usually have 5 to 7 people on the board, people who have not necessarily been in a leadership position before, certainly didn't create the project or anything like that, you tend to get weird dynamics, power struggles. But I live in a 34-unit co-housing with 55 adults, and every adult's on the board. So we managed it together. This weekend, we will have a 1 to 2 hour meeting like we do every month. And, cut the tree down, don't cut the tree down. We'll have a discussion. Basic co-housing math is 1 + 1 = 3. I have an idea, you have an idea, and together we come up with a better idea. And over again, I can't tell you how many times I walked into the room and thought, okay, this is exactly what we should do. We should cut the tree down. And somebody would say, well, let's not cut it down like at 7 o'clock next time, like you did that last time, Chuck. And let's come up with a scenario for the firewood for somebody to come get it, not just leave it rot on the ground for 5 years like you did last time. And, it's just a lot more sophisticated thinking. Every brain's in the game. I have to make dinner where I live once a month, and I cook with different people every month. And I noticed that when I do something with and for my neighbors, but especially with my neighbors, I start to give them benefit of the doubt in ways I never would have considered previously. So you have to see the community building experience as one of the survival, frankly. I mean, not as the co-housing communities, but there are people who argue. Now, our second highest priority as a species is to learn how to be social animals, because it's only as a social animal that we're going to successfully accomplish our first priority as a species, which is survival, the same priority that every other species has. So, and so we've got, fundamentally, we have to get better at knowing how to work together. Favorite part of my job, though, is that everybody who takes the time to learn about how to be a better communitarian, if you will, is they say that the skills they attain in co-housing, they take to their church and to their work and to their family, so that they're successful at all those other levels as well.
I just want to say thank you so much, and, have a blessed day, and I'll be in touch.
You're more than welcome, Aaron. Thanks for calling me.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. I wanted to say thank you one more time to Charles Durrett for the time and the opportunity. If you are interested in learning more about senior co-housing, becoming a trader in your local community, or being part of Study Group 1, please reach out to Charles, and all the information can be found at seniorcohousingco.com. Take care, and we'll see you on the next lesson.